Captain Dean Show.
Welcome back to another episode of the Captain Dean Show. I am Captain Dean, and today is my birthday! It's also the day before Halloween, and the Dodgers are losing the World Series. Toronto Blue Jays have won 3 games, and the Los Angeles Dodgers have won 1 game. And that's enough about baseball. Let's talk about drums, shall we? This drum is the other snare drum I have kept in my drum collection. This drum I got a few years later, and it is in this case. This one is just as important, if not more important to me, than that Ludwig Black Beauty snare drum, because it is this one. So John had been engraving for various drum companies. When I met him, he was working with Tama and Ludwig. He was engraving certain parts for Craviotto and various things like that. So John decided he was ready to start engraving his own drum line, and he had access to World Max drums. World Max drum headquarters. Didn't I already have this problem the last time I talked about it? World Max HQ, World Max Percussion. That's what it was. World Max USA. Anyway, they were located, or are located, in Nashville, Tennessee. This is a World Max Black Dawg. D-A-W-G. And they, of course, put out their line of a brass shell with black plating on it. Just like every drum company has ever done, they also got onto it. But the cool thing about this is that this shell was molded after the 1925 Ludwig Black Beauty, I believe, if that's correct. Maybe I'm wrong about that. And by the way, in the previous episode, I kept referring to drums that were engraved in the 30s and 40s, and I'm really sorry about that. I'm not as dumb as I look. There were actually snare drums that were engraved from Ludwig in the 1920s, because the most sought after Ludwig Black Beauties came from like 1925 and 1928 and stuff like that. Anyway, John decided he was going to branch out and start engraving drums on his own. He was getting more and more into the world of detail. He was becoming inventive with patterns and designs, and he was starting to carve out just unbelievable things like people's names or any kind of graphic that he could do on a drum. He was able to start doing things like that. So his experimentation led to the idea of, hey, I can start getting blank drum shells from World Max and start engraving them and selling them as not so modern drum engraving. So before John Aldridge became who he is today, whatever company he's engraving, which I think is just basically John Aldridge engraving, not so modern drum engraving was kind of the beginning step for him to move in a direction of having control over designs and products that he would put out and engrave for sale. So I was just happened to be at the right place at the right time when all of this started. This is a prototype snare drum that he was working on when he started doing this. I have number 3. Just happened to be my lucky number back then, still is today. The cool thing about this, of course, is his magazine was called Not So Modern Drummer, and Not So Modern Drum Engraving was a reference to the old-fashioned vintage way that drums were made back in the day, and of course he was trying to bring that back. So you can see that the logo is NSMD engraving, and if you look really closely, inside this little scroll pattern on the bottom. That is John Aldridge's initials, the JA. This drum was made in 2001, and like I said, it was the third one in a prototype series. So here's where things get kind of interesting. I had the freedom to choose whatever I wanted. I went with this pattern. This pattern is one of the early patterns that when I got hired, and I mentioned this in the previous episode, we were working on a couple of different things. The Kenny Aronoff Tama signature model snare drum. We were doing the pattern on that. We were doing the Ludwig Black Beauty snare drums, which there were only 90 of those done at that point. And we were engraving onto brass hoops for Johnny Craviotto, who was working on the Craviotto snare drum line at that point. John was engraving a pattern into the hoop, which those were triple flanged hoops, but still. It was a really interesting process because unlike these stick choppers, which are just one simple, wall, triple flange hoops have that barrier on the rim and everything. So there's like a nice little thing on the inside that basically your index finger will fit into, and it's just a flat surface with curved edges on either side. We would take this white paste and I would have to put it on my finger and rub it into the grooves of all of these hoops so that we could trace the pattern onto that hoop for him to engrave out. This is that pattern. So in my thought, it was like, I came in to work for this guy and he was offering to do a snare drum for me, which all I had to pay for on this, I think, was just the materials, the parts. And so it was really cheap because we were buying things at wholesale through World Max. So it was kind of a no-brainer. And back in 2001, I probably paid $100 for this or whatever. But I thought it was a cool idea that I wanted to get the Craviotto design pattern that he designed for the Craviotto and put it on this drum. So that's what I went with, and that's why I went with it, because it was one of the patterns I was working with on a daily basis at that point. So that is what you see on the drum that goes all the way around the shell. And here's where things got really cool. John surprised me by engraving my name into the shell. So this is the Dean Collier number 3 NSMD engraving snare drum. So as I said earlier, this is kind of pretty much the same make and model of the Black Beauty that I have, except it was made by World Max, of course. I went with chrome hardware to give it a little bit of a different look. All of the hardware came from World Max, so these are just basic everyday parts that you could buy back then to build your own drum. Yeah, both of my snare drums that I still have, they're both 5x14 brass shells. But, obviously there's cosmetic differences. And to my ear, they do sound a little bit different. I don't know why, but they do. And this one, for a while, I got to a point with the Black Beauty where it was my number one snare drum to use. But then I started playing these like crappy bars and nightclubs, and everything kind of got shady in my opinion. So I was nervous to take that drum. So I started taking this one. This was kind of like my backup to the Black Beauty. And there was a point for a while where this was the number one that got used, because I started getting worried about what if the Black Beauty got stolen? What if it got beat up and on and on. I just got paranoid about damaging this prized possession that I had. So this became my backup snare drum, and for a short time it became my main snare drum as well. The hardware is exactly the same as what I did to my Black Beauty. It's the single stick chopper hoops with the collar hooks and the tension rods and the tube lugs, again, all in chrome. Both of my drums currently have the 24 strand, just basic pearl brand, because that's what I can get at my local store. I tried the Pure Sound wires for a while, and they're really expensive. And yeah, I heard a difference. They're very well made, but at the end of the day, you're beating the shit out of a drum, and so the wires are going to break whether you pay $10 or $30. Just get good wires that you like and stick with it. Just like the other drum, Remo Hazy Ambassador on the bottom, Remo Emperor on top. I don't do any muffling. I don't do duct tape or anything like that. This drum is really cool. The patterns, again, the simple Craviotto pattern, and the only highlights to it would be the logo that John engraved onto it. I love the fact that I've got the number 3 prototype. That was really cool. And the fact that he engraved my name. And yeah, in the early 2000s, I was spelling my name with 2 E's because, I was going to be a rock star. So I had to look cool. I wanted my name to look cool. But anyway, Dean is Dean. I'm Dean. Doesn't matter to me if it's spelled with 2 E's or an A. I started going back to the A spelling when I started becoming a full-time bass player. I finally just started going by my real government name. So anyway, this is my NSMD World Max Black Dog, engraved by John Aldridge in 2001. The other thing neat about this being a prototype is John usually engraves his initials inside the shell of any drum that he engraves, but he didn't do it on this one because he put his initials inside the NSMD logo area right there. You can see it. J.A. John Aldridge. He's a son of a gun. I've never had to replace anything on these except for the drum heads and the wires. The parts and everything, I take good care of my equipment, and it takes good care of me. Anyway, I just wanted to do another episode real quick to feature this drum, and since it's my birthday, I thought it'd be cool to show it off, because this was one of the best jobs and gifts that life ever gave to me. It was being able to work in Nashville with John Aldridge and work in the drum industry. I've got stories for days. I got to meet everybody you could think of. I got to go to all the drum conventions. I became a drum tech. I went on the road as a drummer myself, and this drum and my Black Beauty traveled all over America with me, and I'm really thankful for having these drums in my life. So there you go. There's my birthday edition Captain Dean show. I picked up a free drink from 7 Brew on my way home. And if you have a 7 Brew in your area, be sure to get the pina colada with extra pineapple smoothie. It is fantastic. I really don't have any pictures or anything about this drum. Unfortunately, when this drum was built, the only thing in my possession was a 35mm camera, so I could not just take selfies and constant pictures of it being built. And I actually have no photographs of this drum being built. Like the Black Beauty, we made 90 of them, and that was a big deal. But when this drum got made, I did not have a camera. I did not take pictures of it being assembled or anything like that. So the only thing I really have about this drum are many recording sessions and a couple of pictures of me playing drums on stage or something, and this probably is up there with me. So that's pretty much all I got. So there's no fantastic ending with pictures on this episode. But anyway, there you go. I'm Captain Dean. It's my birthday, and thanks for tuning in, and stay tuned for more super awesome Captain Dean Show episodes. Do 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 do
do do do do do, ba do 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 boo boo, ba ba da ba ba ba, do 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 ba one ba ba, ba da ba ba da 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 ba ba da ba ba.
Funny story before I started recording this episode. I still have in this drum case a pair of Johnny Rab drumsticks that are completely unused. These are from the 2000 Snare Drum Olympics that were held in Nashville, Tennessee. I was a judge on that year of doing the Snare Drum Olympics, and I still have these sticks. So how cool is that? Johnny Rab was a super nice guy. He had his drumstick office just a few doors down from where the Not So Modern Drum magazine office was. So we spent a lot of time with Johnny and Greg, his assistant, and those are some cool memories to have. This was the first and only drumstick company I ever got an endorsement from. The coolest thing that ever happened was getting my picture inside a catalog for them to advertise their sticks and everything. So really, really cool memory. I really enjoyed hanging out with these guys and using these drumsticks. So as you can see, I use Johnny Rab 5A acorn tip drumsticks back in the day. When Johnny Rab shut down production, I actually had a hard time finding a drumstick that I liked. I ended up going with Vader. How cool is that?